My mother's from Trinidad. She's a Indian woman that lives in Trinidad as a Muslim, so she was raised around water. And she married a U.S. sailor who's my father, who they met at Chaguaramas Bay in Trinidad. And so because my father was a lifer in the Navy, all my life I've been around water because he's pretty much was a sailor, worked his all the way up to become a commander in the Navy, specifically dealing with destroyers and flotillas of destroyers, fleets of destroyers. So as the civil rights movement opened up opportunities for black sailors to move up the ranks, a handful, my father was one of the chosen Negroes that actually went from being a third-class sailor, which is the lowest within the military ranks, up to becoming a commander, which is one of the highest for black men in the military. And as he moved up the ranks, he had to go to different schools, different military bases for training, for education, for hands-on duty. So we found ourselves going from Philadelphia Naval Shipyard to New Jersey, to the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, to the OCS School in Newport, Rhode Island, to San Diego, to Imperial Beach, and then on my own I've traveled. So as a kid, I was just around water, and I was like kind of an adventurous kind of brother, little brother. So I liked fishing and crabbing and making little rafts and body surfing. And in Newport, Rhode Island, back in '65 was when I first started. So my first time in the water with a surfboard, but I actually became a surfer, a regular surfer in Monterey, California, '66, '67. And it was a rough time. And from there, I went to the Catholic University of San Diego, where I was on a surf team for the Catholic University of San Diego. I also worked for Gordon and Smith Surf Shop on Garnett Street in San Diego. And from there, actually I got kicked out of school because I had anti-war activity against the war of Vietnam. And I kind of went on the road, part of the whole hippie migration in that period. And so I was surfing up and down California as part of following different safe bases or communes that existed for hippies at that period, you know, whether it's Ensenada or Ocean Beach or Venice Beach or Isla Vista, Santa Barbara, or Big Sur, the river mouth, Esalen, or Pacifica, going up the coast. And I was just following that path. And behind my own ideological development, I kind of got more involved with, I got accepted at the University of California in San Diego. But at the San Diego, before University of San Diego, I got involved with more black student politics. When I went to college, I was the only black kid. So we formed, you know, so I got involved with some radical Students for Democratic Society, and from there we fought for and demanded more inclusion of African students. So the first year, there's a brother named Jerry McCall, who was a surfer in San Diego. And that was like first time I ever met a black surfer in my life. And so me and him were like boo-hoo partners because he surfed and I surfed. And that was like a really rewarding experience. Because up until that point, it was like if you were black and you surf, you were considered a white boy trying to be a white boy. There's a lot of tension for that. In 1966, 65, 66, and 67, the surf culture in California, especially in Central California, was divided between what they call greasers and surfers. And greasers hated surfers, and surfers were considered rebels, nonconformists, and surfing was not considered a legitimate sport by mainstream America. So the hippie element on my high school campus, Junipero Memorial Catholic High School, they evolved into surfers, and I joined with them because I was always a kind of a rebel because of my mother being a Muslim and my father being a Navy man. They were very, very strict. So I just kind of rebelled against that strictness as discreetly as I could without getting caught. In Monterey, because surfers were considered nonconformists, pot smoking, long hairs, and so forth, but there was a lot of harassment from the police, and the greasers hated us. And greasers basically were white kids who were more into the Jimmy Dean, Marlon Brando, motorcycle riding, hot rods, switchblades, kind of like white gang members, I guess, for lack of a better word. And they would attack the surfers, and in particular, they hated me because they were also very racist. And so, plus my father was totally opposed to my surfing because, number one, he had an image. My father's a Navy man. I'm trying to become an officer. So he's trying to play the game, America's game. And so the notion of his son hanging around these long-haired, pot-smoking nonconformists was totally anathema to him, number one. And then being a black man is like, you're supposed to play basketball, you're supposed to play football, you're supposed to run track. And he tried to push me in those sports, and I hated those sports. I like to play them as fun, but I didn't want to be in a high school football team. I didn't want to be in a high school basketball team. He made me. And so I had to sneak and surf. My mom is real cool, so she backed me. So we pretty much, me and her united against my dad. And so, I would borrow my friend's boards. When I got my first board, I used to bury it in Sand City and hide it in this, bury it, go home, come back, dig it out, and go surfing. And in those days, it was really, the water was very, very cold, and we didn't have very good wetsuits. We had to build a fire, and paddle off, surf for a half hour, come back, defrost, go back a half hour, come back and defrost, because once again, the wetsuit technology was very undeveloped at that period, and I only had a little top piece, a little tail below that I sewed up because it was all ragged, because I had no money. And my father didn't support my surfing, so I had to pretty much guerrilla it. Even my first surfboard, if you set it in the water, 3/4 of it was underwater. It had so much laminate and resin and glass and so forth, it just pretty much was half submerged, but I loved it. And no matter what, if I had to use a refrigerator, I just got hooked on surfing. So Monterey those days was pretty rough. There were nights where I couldn't come in because greasers would be on the beach, waiting to, have butterfly switchblades, slice me, throw rocks at me, and so forth. So I'd have to wait until they leave. Sometimes it'd be dark to paddle in, hide my board, and sneak on home, ride my bike home to the Navy base where my father lived, was where we lived at, So it was very challenging. Of course, when I went to Catholic University of San Diego with Jerry McCall, we had a little surf team. That was heaven. Because, I was surfing like Ocean Beach and Sunset Cliffs and Point Loma, Mission Beach, going to Mexico a whole lot. And it was just a beautiful experience in San Diego. But then again, at the same time, culturally, we were going through the whole Black Power movement, and I got snapped into that. So I started getting attention from my comrades in the Black Panther Party and other folks telling me, that's not a good image for you to be a black revolutionary and a surfer. And I kind of rejected that phenomenon. And actually, you'd be surprised sometimes black folks will, if you don't fall within a certain standard of prescribed behavior that's considered black, they'll put pressure on you and mess with you. And I'm not a gangster, I'm not a thug, so I wasn't like, I had other kind of credentials. My other credential was my love of black people and love of humanity. But actually as it progressed through now, throughout the movement, I'm known as the revolutionary black surfer, because I'm still involved very deeply in the movement. And I do a lot of work with the liberation movements in Africa and here. And that's pretty much what happened in Monterey. It was a challenging time, especially with my father and the greasers and the police and lack of resources. It was a challenging time, but it's kind of like, once you get strong on surfing, man, nothing can stop you. You just love it so much, and that's my sport. And I've tried all the sports out there. That's my sport, that's my thing. It's not even a sport, it's almost like a lifestyle, not in a Eurocentric notion of, Surfer Magazine proclaims, but my relationship to Mother Earth, my relationship to the ocean, my relationship to the sun, my relationship with my spirituality to nature spirituality. Because I don't consider myself a surfer in the classic, Beach Boys or Surfer Magazine vibe. I consider myself a surfer in terms of nature, a soul surfer. My father died about 1.5 years ago, and a month before he died, this is a man that never hugged me, never said he loved me, He said that he was wrong and, repressing my ability to surf, because of course surfing now is like a really well-known sport, and it's in TV and magazines, an accepted sport. And he apologized for repressing my desire to become a surfer and, really banning me from surfing. And I got my ass whooped sometimes because I'd come home with sand on my hands or sand from the beach, and he'd know I've been surfing. He would whoop me with the plug from an iron. But well, in them days, dads would do that kind of stuff. Today, you go to jail. But he apologized, said he was wrong, that surfing was a legitimate sport, and he should not have stopped me from doing what I wanted to do, my spirit wanted me to do. So it was very touching for him to admit that. He's a Navy man, right? He's a water man. But surfing, once again, was not in the paradigm of what's acceptable behavior by standard American behavior patterns. And there are those patterns out here, Well, the question being asked is the role of politics and surfing, how that affected my life. To be honest with you, if I reflect upon it, my getting into surfing was rebellion against what a black boy is supposed to do, number one. And the positive was that I loved the ocean. My getting involved in revolutionary political politics was rebellion against the racism. I'm 57, so I come out of the late segregation and the new so-called integration that took years to actually become turnkey, to actually happen. Just because they passed a law that says there's now integration, that didn't mean white folks also stop being racist, stop being segregationists. Even today we're seeing the struggle for full integration occur. If we look at the University of California LA, that last year had only 92 black students accepted in the college, of which half were athletes. And the school has got 45,000 people. So because my father was rising up the rank to become a Navy officer, he would get stationed in places that were predominantly white, okay? We would live many times in black communities, but I would go to white schools, like Gloucester Catholic High School and Junipero Memorial High School, and in De La Salle Academy, Newport, Rhode Island. And the children were so racist there, and I'm like the only kid, and that I would be targeted for a lot of really brutal racist verbal assaults and physical assaults. And I would try to tell my parents, but my mother thought, because she's a Muslim from Trinidad, that going to a Catholic school was better than going to a public school, because Catholic schools were disciplined, and that she wouldn't have to worry about maybe getting involved with gang activity or drugs or whatever parents are scared of their kids getting involved with a public school. In those days, Catholic schools were the poor people's private school, in essence. And plus, we got a free breakfast. They had a free breakfast program before we started that in the Black Panther Party. And so behind the racism and my rebellious spirit, coming from a very conservative Islamic, my mother being a Pakistani Indian Muslim from Trinidad, my father being a Navy man, I was just rebellious. And so, and my mother, I think, also instilled in me a certain set of values and ethics. So when I went to the Catholic University of San Diego, there was only 3 black kids in the whole college that I entered. 2 lived off campus, I lived on campus. For the first month, I tried to become a preppy college kid with the Catholic jacket, with the insignia, the short hair, the outfit. And as part of the orientation initiation for freshmen at the Catholic University of San Diego, you had to climb up a hill in Linda Vista. And a big USD and big boulders, we had to whitewash it white as part of initiation for freshmen. And the upperclassmen would be up top there throwing dirt clouds at you as you go up there and paint this thing. It's just an initiation program. Because I was the only black kid going up there, the football players started throwing rocks at me. Nigga this, nigga that, nigga the other. Now here I am, my first month in Catholic school, trying to conform. After that brutal experience, when I came down the hill, I said, F this. I ain't going to try to conform to this madness. I'm just going to do my own thing within the framework of the countercultural movement, the political hippie movement of the mid-60s. And so I formed a group called Students for a Democratic Society, which is a local chapter of a national organization that led the anti-war movement. And I organized the white kids on the campus, the white kids that wanted to rebel against being good, clean, Catholic, conservative kids. And they wanted to be like what they saw with the Doors, and Jimi Hendrix, and Jefferson Airplanes. They wanted to be like what they heard about in Haight-Ashbury. There was a group of kids. So we organized and formed the SDS chapter. And basically I used those white kids to put demonstrations and protests against the Catholic University administration to increase black students, to fight for the increase of black students and black faculty, together with us having hippie parties on the campus and playing rock music and smoking herb and having long hair and not wearing the uniforms that we're supposed to wear and dressing, just kind of hippie style, And it was successful. It was very successful. So the next year, we had an influx of black students. And the black students recruited me to help organize the Black Student Union, which is the first black student union on campus. But because of the anti-war demonstrations, and we were the only school to close down for 3 weeks against the war, the police came very brutal with us. And I got beat up a lot. In fact, in Ocean Beach, I got beat unconscious because of my involvement with the Black Student Union movement and with a campaign in Ocean Beach where the Army Corps of Engineers in the city wanted to break the surf spots and drop boulders to build a marina. And so all of us in Ocean Beach had a beach rebellion. And I got targeted. And some ex-Nam white surfers blew up the crane that was dropping the boulders into Ocean Beach, which destroyed their effort to break up our surf spot. Because Ocean Beach has nice waves, but whenever you build a marina, it stops the flow of the ocean so the boats can be secure and stable. So we actually stopped it, but I got beat up really, really bad by the police, unconscious. So from the Black Student Union to be formed in the campus, and a lot of these conflicts with the police and the struggle to kind of find myself between the surfing world and the black world, I got more involved with the Black Student Union and evolved into the Black Panther Party because the police were so brutal. You got to remember, J. Edgar Hoover's headquarters for the White House was in La Jolla. And J. Edgar Hoover, who was not transvestite, he was gay but would dress like a woman's clothes, with women's clothing, and this is actually in his biography. he would have all his sexual freaky-deaky shit in La Jolla, but he had brutal repression on anything that was considered progressive, black student unions, Black Panther Party, SDS, and so forth, you know? So, and plus San Diego being a border town, you've got all international intelligence agencies because of it being a border town. You've got MCRD, you've got Oceanside, you've got the world's largest helicopter base, you've got a large 32nd Street Navy base, all based in San Diego, so you have all these intelligence agencies. So basically, behind the brutal police repression, that radicalized me. Behind the conservatism of that period, if you were a hippie, if you're a black student union activist or Black Panther, you really face hell. So I think it's a combination of rebelling against the fact that because I'm a black youth, I'm supposed to play basketball or run track and not surf, and because I'm going to a Catholic university, my father is a Navy man, I'm supposed to try to conform and become an integrationist and become part of the system, and I rebelled against that. So those are the two dynamics that pretty much characterize my surfing career, both politically and surfing-wise, in terms of what's driven me to this point. Now I'm kind of mellow. I'm still a revolutionary, and I'm still involved with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. But more and more I see brothers and sisters surfing. It's not as controversial, and we don't get the kind of repression. I don't face the kind of racism from the police or even white surfers that I faced in the early stages when we were kind of a novelty as black surfers. Plus, to be honest with you, in the last 15 years, as I went through a master's program, BA program in Third World Studies, and master's at UCLA, a PhD program at Howard in African Studies, and I also studied in Ethiopia, I began realizing that we started surfing. We were the original surfers. And it's not an ethnic question. It's the fact that Africa has got, some of the warmest water in the world. We've got a massive coastline. We've got waves. And historically, our water people, Dogon, lived around the coast of Africa. And so whenever you put any people, I don't care what ethnicity you are, in a certain environment, they're going to learn to master that environment. They're going to learn to have fun in that environment. They're going to develop spiritual belief systems behind that environment, like the Eskimos and igloos and Eskimos in a cold zone of Alaska and northern Canada, that area. The children there know how to make fun out of the snow, know how to have a good time. Well, logically then, of course it can be verified now through the writings of the missionaries that came across with the Spanish and Portuguese when they first left Europe and came down along the Guinean coast, and they wrote about seeing tall, swarthy, dark men riding wooden planks on these waves along the Guinean coast. That's empirical evidence. But common sense says, if I live in a desert, my father worked with camels, I'm going to master having a good time with camels in a desert environment. So for me, the fact that the North Sea is so frigid you can't go in the water where Europeans came from, but Africa, the Samoan Islands, New Zealand, Hawaii is surrounded by warm water, it was only logical that we were the first surfers. And my definition of surfer is people ride waves. But using the real narrow Surfer magazine's definition of surfer, which means standing on the board, we did that also way back in time, I think that because of African people being targeted, together with all people really, but especially Africa, that's our focus point, being targeted for slavery, for colonialism, and for neocolonialism and segregation, that African traditions were violently disrupted and destroyed behind the slave trade. And the slave trade basically set up fortresses along the coasts of Africa, East Africa and West Africa, and there were military fortresses to, number one, go into the inland and capture Africans as prisoners of war, because we fought back as prisoners of war, put us in these fortresses, and then the slave ships would come and take the African prisoners of war, put them on slave ships, and drop us all over the Caribbean, Central and South America, number one. These fortresses evolved into becoming the colonial headquarters, the colonial capitals of the French colonies, the British colonies, the Italian colonies, the German colonies, and so forth, okay? These coastal areas were where the export of African natural resources and our labor occurred to get into Europe, into the United States to feed capitalism. So they became militarized zones. And the French, Spanish, Portuguese, and colonial militaries made it pretty much off limits for Africans to be on the coastal areas, because in coastal areas we could, number one, escape. Number two, different liberation movements, different African freedom fighting organizations could bring in reinforcements, bring in weapons and so forth to break us out of the fortresses, to free the Africans who are prisoners of war, get back to our kingdoms. Number three, because the ocean front real estate throughout the world is the most valuable, the most expensive, the most desired. The cost was very, very expensive. Number 4, because of segregation, like at Bruce's Beach, like in Santa Monica and Inkwell, like in Huntington Beach, like in Virginia Beach, like in Newport Beach, like in every beach in the United States, for instance. Same thing as throughout most of the world. Under segregation, we could not be in the same environment, use the same beaches as white folks. And periodically they would have us like have a little black beach like Inkwell, for instance, or Bruce's Beach. But then as the demand for real estate frontage and real estate property would increase, they would use eminent domain or carry on terrorist acts to run us off of those beaches so they can grab that real estate. So really from the first contact with Europeans, which was through the prisoners of war slave trade phenomenon, all the way up until today, African people, black people's access to the beach has been limited, either through direct military or through laws of segregation, and now it's the fact that beachfront real estate is very, very expensive, and we can't afford it. There was a time, like in LA, where you can get a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment on the beach in Venice for $500-600. Today, the same apartment now costs you $2,000 for 600 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bath on the ocean, So it's a series of phenomenons, but we're breaking through that by driving from the inner cities, from South Central to the ocean. One or two brothers may live on the beach if they got that kind of ducats, but it's very, very expensive. Very, very expensive. Why is surfing such a central part of my life? Today, I need exercise, and it's the most fun exercise I know of, point A. Always, when I come out of that water, I'm buzzed, I'm high, I'm electric. I sleep so much better, after a surf session. When I'm paddling out, it's like I'm going into another world, a world that's devoid of racism and sexism and classism, a world which is me and Mother Earth. I guess being raised Catholic, I rejected Catholicism, but I have a sense of spirituality. It's kind of more toward the Rastafari, tied more towards traditional African religions. And a lot of it has to do with positing nature and Mother Earth as the God force, as a universal force. And you live in an asphalt concrete jungle like the jungle where I live in, headquarters of the Bloods. All we see is concrete, asphalt, sirens, ghetto bird, helicopters, just a lot of stress and tension in this environment. But when I paddle out and the wave breaks over my head, the first break is like being rebaptized back into my true nature as a human being, as part of Mother Earth, and not just socially constructed, I'm black and therefore I'm evil, I'm negative, I'm ugly, I'm a thug, I'm overly sexed, I'm ignorant, all I can do is beat on the drum and run track and shoot a ball. And those stereotypes that are forced upon us, that's all we can do is just be what the media and what America has defined us as. When that water breaks over my head, when the first wave paddling through the wave, it's like I'm re-cruising back into my natural self, which means all things are possible. And you paddle out and you look and all you see is just ocean upon ocean and no buildings, no fences. You feel free. You have a sense of freedom. There's no enclosure of your experience with the sky, the blue sky and the ocean as you paddle out. When you turn around, and a lot of times in the morning on the West Coast here, we have dolphins coming up and down, and seagulls and pelicans. That just further adds to this notion of I'm in nature now, I'm in Mother Earth, I'm with the real God, and not the God of the US dollar, or the God of the gun, or the God of the weapons, And then you turn around, and when the waves are breaking, you catch a wave, you paddle to catch the wave. As you elevate yourself up, and you're riding that wave, it's like, I'm in harmony, I'm one. I'm integrated within the wave, within Mother Earth. And as you kind of carve, you don't fight the waves, you work with Mother Earth. You learn to be in harmony with the waves so you get the maximum ride, the longest ride. And I don't know, but when I ride a wave, it pulls so much energy out of me because it's such a total experience that when I turn around and paddle out, it's like, it's a catharsis. I've cleansed all the nodules of stress from being an African man in America and being on a planet Earth with all the toxicity and all the artificial crass materialism, and just purges all those crystals of stress out of me. And it's so healthy and reinvigorating. And actually, it's kept me optimistic about a better world. It's kept me enthused about young people. It's kept me from being very cynical and running to alcoholism and drugs because life is so hard for all human beings, but especially for a brother in America, especially LA, where they got black men targeted for the prisons or death. And there's a big old crosshair on every brother in this, especially in these big urban areas, man. I don't got to talk about the statistics of the prison rates or the harassment rates or, you know, driving while black, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you know. So for me, it's a decolonization force. It decolonizes me of all the madness of Babylon, you know. The question is, I live in an area called the Jungle in South Central Los Angeles, and how does the community relate to me? I've lived in that area for about 10 years, about 11 years now, and a lot of brothers just know me, and they're kind of like, right on, brother, right on. A lot of the young brothers and sisters, I have a 15-year-old daughter. I have two daughters, one 25, one 15. My 15-year-old, when she was much younger, every time I go surfing, I load up the car with all the kids, my RV, my van, whatever. And they would go to the beach, and we all play in the water, and some of them would try to surf, but I would always take them to the beach for years. So those kids now are the bloods of today. My daughter's now 15. The typical blood, Crip gangster around this town is about anywhere from 13 to about 21, typically. So they don't look at surfing as a white boy sport because they was raised around me. We'd have beach parties. They know that I'm down with the hood. They know I'm down with the movement. So it's not like I'm a brother that's trying to be white, that rejects black women, black culture, that's ashamed of myself. They know I'm totally committed to my people, that I'm a surfer. Plus, I've been propagandizing the fact that we were the first surfers. I talk about Duke Mahoko and Queen. I do a lot of education because sometimes I'm a real estate appraiser. So I'll be driving into Watts or Compton, or I'll be driving into Beverly Hills or in San Fernando Valley or Encino or Simi Valley, and I always carry a board on my car. So I'm kind of one of them spontaneous guys. When it's time to go surfing, I don't have to drive back to my pad, put my board on my car and go surfing. So on my car, wherever I'm at, I can go straight to the waves. So people ask me all the time, you're black and you surf? So I go on my little, Malcolm X soapbox and talk about the origins of surfing, who the first surfers were, how surfing got introduced in the United States around 1910, 1912, through Duke Mahoko, who was the world's fastest swimmer, who also surfed, and he came on a tour in the United States and showed people in Malibu and Virginia Beach surfing for the first time. So I go through my little soapbox explaining what surfing is all about and how even golf and tennis was once white sports, and now look at it, So in the jungle especially, I get a lot of love. I get a lot of love. Now if I go some hoods where they don't know me, they'll challenge me. If I go, let's say, certain areas of Watts where people, I don't know people, they don't know me, and I pull up and do an appraisal, and these brothers be standing on the corner like, you ain't black, huh? You think you white? I said, no, I ain't black, brother. I'm an African, And they'll say, and then they'll say like, what's up with the surfing? They say, well, brother, slavery is a monster, man. Segregation is a monster. It kept us from our natural environment. Africa's surrounded by the ocean, and anything to do with the water, we mastered it all. In fact, we were the first sailors, We were the first fishermen. In fact, all people on the planet Earth came from Africa. Even the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, genetically, the mitochondrial DNA testing is African. We came from the first human beings. They came from northwest Ethiopia, off our line, called Africanus. So we all African, and everybody on planet Earth came and migrated from Africa to populate the whole world. They happen to be in cold climates, so they lost their suntan. That's why they got white. But, so all of a sudden, at a certain point, they're like, okay, brother, come on, why don't you come over and talk to us, man? Pull out a split, we sit down and talk, and all of a sudden, I've educated these brothers out of this narrow box that surfing is just a white boy sport, and they started surfing, and that our history began with slavery, as opposed to our history began when there was no such thing as slavery. We all lived in communalism, and our religion, our spirituality was one in harmony with the ocean, one in harmony with the jungle, one in harmony with the desert. And so with the ocean, anything you could do with the ocean, we knew how to do it. Because we got 4 million years living next to that ocean now. In 4 million years, you can figure out getting a palm frond and riding a wave. First of all, just to get your boats in and out of the surf, you got to ride a wave. You got to break through the surf to get out to sea to catch a fish. Then you come back in, you got to ride the wave with your boat in to be able to get your boat on shore to offload your fish. That's just common sense. So they were riding boats, and the boats, if you look in African National Geographic films, these cats be standing up with paddles. You know what I'm saying? I'm just giving you some empirical evidence based upon just National Geographic documentaries we have seen all our lives. So the notion of riding a wave, we actually have seen it, but we never connotated it with surfing. And of course, I just saw a documentary, it was at the Malibu Film Festival, that talked about an island off the coast of West Africa, where brothers were riding wooden planks, you know, for centuries, you know? And all of a sudden, some white surfers discovered it, quote unquote discovered it, as opposed to maybe, you know, they were just part of a long train of surfers. The Europeans who now surf were part of a long dynasty of surfing. They came from Africa, through Melanesia, through the Polynesia, through the Hawaiian Isles, came to the United States through Duke Kahanamoku, who brought it here. And Duke Kahanamoku is blacker than anybody in this room. Have you ever seen Duke Kahanamoku? Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking, that's a brother. Broad nose, I mean, he was like the godfather, you know? But there's also some other royalties in Hawaii that are darker than Duke Kahanamoku. So, you know, in terms of the jungle, and my brothers and sisters, I do a lot of work with gang organizing, and with black student unions and so forth. And people like Will, Rick, who live in the hood, who ain't running around trying to be European or denying their blackness, all contribute to setting a culture where surfing will be embraced, and it's getting more and more embraced by brothers and sisters in the United States, as well as, you know, you go to Brazil, you go to Trinidad, Barbados, you see a surfer, but because the United States is the center of world imperialism, is the most advanced industrial, technological, media country in the world, whatever we do here has a rippling effect all over the world. So because we got so many down brothers from the hood who surf, cats my age and younger, it's becoming more and more acceptable. And so now they say, yeah, brother, right on. That's us. That's us. You know, and their children, they pass them to me all the time. They teach them how to surf. We have surf camp in the summertime. We take brothers and sisters from the hood, young ones as well as women that are 40 years old weighing 350. Big, heavy-set women. They all had a fantasy. They always want to surf. And they got the heart. And we teach them how to surf. I've always kind of desired checking out surfing, but it was taboo because it was viewed as a white boy's thing. You'd be surprised. Because, you know, if you look at somebody riding a wave, it's phenomenal. It's like, wow, that looks like fun. You know what I mean? It just looks like fun. You don't have to know nothing about surfing. Just riding a wave in the ocean looks like fun to anybody. I don't care what your ethnicity is, what your age is. It just looks like fun. It is.